just wanted to let y'all know we are live streaming this event for our owner who can't be here tonight. So if y'all want to like kind of look vaguely that way and just be like, is it on yet? Hi, Joe! And anyone else watching our live feed? Oh, no, she's saying no. Hi, Joe!
Hi, Joe! Yeah, without the owner support, we wouldn't be able to have this amazing platform and amazing bookstore. So we really I'm like getting ahead of myself. If anyone needs chairs, we have some extra folding chairs by the bathroom. We are super excited for this ice cream social. Lisa and Amanda were sent last month, but because of Hurricane Harvey, they couldn't be here. So we're really glad they're back. And also Hurricane Harvey, we are going to be collecting donations for Counterbalance ATX. And I forgot to put out the bag for that, but I will amend that right after I get off the stage. So if you have any like loose change or spare cash that you'd like to donate, they're a really great organization. They do a lot of grassroots work and have opened a shelter for people who are displaced from Houston. And Nara and I are from Houston, so it would really mean a lot to us if you could just ship in a couple bucks. Yeah. And this is like off topic, but I was mentioning to a couple people earlier today that y'all have a really great energy and really uplifting and exciting, and like I'm always happy to be here, but today's crowd is like totally jiving, so.
Yay, us!
And so we're gonna kick off with the open mic, but we've got a list sitting on the table over here. If you are suddenly like stricken with inspiration or the need to share, feel free to sign up. We're going to go ahead and get started with our first reader.
And I'm really excited. Two of our Malvern employees are going to be reading the open mic today. And as it is right now, one of them's starting us off and one of them is finishing, unless somebody else signs up, which is totally fine. So we're going to start with Kelsey Williams.
Yay!
Wow, I've been up here so many times before, but never to like read my own stuff. I'm so scared, so here we are. Okay, so this is a short story of mine that's a work in progress. It's titled Compass, and it is about grief. There was no needle on Maggie's compass, but it was laughing. The needle had popped off around the rock that had a face and had run down the road. Maggie didn't want to go after the needle to her compass because she didn't think it was helping much anyway. A break in the naked, skinny trees revealed a pasture, and there was nothing there but Mother. Mother stood in the middle of the field, and she was bent in half. The giant must have come and grabbed Mother's head in one hand, her feet in the other, and cracked her stiff frame right in half. Maggie stood watching Mother. Mother didn't make a sound, but the silence to Maggie cut through sharp, like a secret. The compass in Maggie's hand began to burn her, and it was still laughing. She opened her hand and let the compass drop to the ground with a dense thud. Mother was bent in a 90-degree angle, her feet still firm on the ground, her head the same height as her hips, which were pointed and sharp. Right now, Mother's face was turned away from Maggie. She could tell because all there was a cascade of silver curls grazing the ground. "You called the needle, didn't you?" Maggie said. Mother didn't answer, and so Maggie took 2 big steps forward. Mother's head slowly began turning the wrong way. Then she stood facing Maggie with her mouth open wide. The lipstick was odd to Maggie because it was a shade Mother would never have worn when she was alive. Maggie was afraid because she didn't want this to be the Mother face she saw in her memories forever. She took 1 step forward and then another, and soon Maggie was facing Mother, a whisper space between them. There came from Mother a deep rattling so loud and huge and heavy that Maggie closed her eyes and covered her ears. When the rattle was gone and she opened her eyes, Mother was standing upright. Her hair was still curly, but now strawberry blonde, and she wore a leotard and pink ballet slippers. She was young and smiling, and there was that gap between her front teeth. Maggie grabbed Mother by the shoulders and pulled her in for an embrace. Her hair smelled like cigarettes. Mother grabbed Maggie's waist and held her hand, and they danced in circles. Maggie laughed and allowed the warmness she felt to escape her body. Mother's hands were like ice when she brushed them against Maggie's cheek. She gave Maggie a quick pat and a gap-toothed smile, and she turned and started walking away towards the other end of the pasture. Maggie did not hear which beat told Mother to do that, but she knew that she should not follow. She felt heavy then, and craved more heaviness, and she walked back to the compass, which had stopped laughing and had started to whimper. Maggie picked it up and put it in the pocket of her jeans and continued down the curved trail to nowhere. Maybe the giant would meet her there. The compass missed its needle, Maggie knew, and so she went in search of it in the woods. There were only creatures scurrying in the dead, half-eaten leaves that littered the ground. All Maggie could see were claws and fur and blood. Noises coming from the compass morphed and changed key in a way that made Maggie's hair stand on end. Maggie didn't care about the direction she was going and regretted picking up the compass after Mother left, but she felt a sense of urgency and wanted to protect this sad device somehow. The compass had bit her companion for many moons, and she felt obligated to at least shut the thing up and give rise to peace. Suddenly, there were cries that pierced into the skin of the twilight sky. Maggie felt like the sound came from everywhere at once. In a panic, she began to throw her arms wildly through the leaves and the carcasses and the dead twigs in search of the source. The senses, sight and touch and hearing and memory all overwhelmed Maggie to zenith, and she fell to the ground. There was a silence then, a true silence, and Maggie fell into a deep slumber. When Maggie woke, she opened her eyes and was surprised by the brightness of it all. She began moving her body. She was kicking, waving her arms, but all she felt was a rush of stale air and leaves poking into her skin. There seemed to be nothing solid except for the weight of the earth pushing up against her back. Maggie willed her arm in front of her face and was shocked into stillness. First, she noticed the needle to her compass was in her hand. It was beautiful and gold, unmistakable. But then she saw the mucus. Her body seemed to be coated in a pinkish goo, and her fingers were rounded and small, unwilling to let go of the needle. Maggie cried then, and she could feel the power of life erupt from her tiny newborn lungs. The giant stood there watching Maggie, and when it seemed that the cries were over for now, he scooped her up and held her tiny body in his warm, dark palm. Maggie felt both comforted and terrified, but knew that he controlled her fate now, and she needed something to tie herself to. "Come with me now, Maggie," the giant said. "It won't feel this heavy all of the time."
Thank you so much, Kelsey. We're so happy to have her always joining us here for ice cream and helping us out. She's got really great book recommendations. Up next, we've got Maris Finch, another ice cream social regular.
Hi everyone, it's such a nice big crowd tonight. It's good to see everyone. So I'm going to be reading a short excerpt of my novel in progress called Jantown. It started from the middle, so what you need to know is that Jantown is a desert town that has seceded from the Union. The scene that follows shows what happens when a Unionite comes to Jantown, and also Arthur is the name of the leader of the town. There was supposed to be a Union-wide news story about our town once when I was 10. Larger-than-life reporters with cameras showed up one day. They kept their arms and legs and necks covered with thick cotton clothing, even though it was hot. It was always hot. They slathered their faces with layers of sunscreen and still wrapped their heads in scarves. Only their eyes, nose, and mouths were exposed. If I didn't know any better, I'd think they didn't have eyebrows, ears, or chins. Come to think of it, they never took off their sunglasses either, not in our presence, so maybe they didn't have eyeballs either. The sunglasses had sides, as if they were suctioned to their face. It was as if they had descended upon a wholly different, inhospitable planet. They wouldn't shake anyone's hands besides the current Arthur, Arthur 15, who dressed better on that day than any day of his reign. It was his last year as Arthur, and he wanted to make an impression. Though he made it publicly clear the week before they arrived that he still deeply hated any Unionites, he wanted to portray Jantown in the best light. This would become part of his legacy. He was a pompous ass, really, among the worst Arthurs the town has ever seen, according to my parents. A good Arthur cared about what happened within the Jantown city limits, cared about the people and the infrastructure and the dump, and didn't give two shits about what happened outside. Arthur 15, though, ran on a platform of expansion and worldliness. He didn't last his full term. Our teachers had prepared us in school the entire week before with lessons on manners and grammar and how to interact with a Unionite, how to properly shake their hands. The adults cleaned and cleaned, shaving minutes off of their work days to come home and clean. Every day, the dust came back, though. There was only so much one could do about it, but it was the only thing they could think of to ready their homes. They didn't know who'd be interviewed, whose space would be on camera. My mother's shop was busy from open to close with people trying to buy last-minute outfits. She'd already stashed a new one away for me days before. The entire town greeted their vans as they rolled in. We had our own news station on the scene as well, though with their outdated equipment, they looked painfully like the Fisher-Price version of the visitors. It was a Friday afternoon. School was closed. Businesses that weren't in the immediate town square were also temporarily closed. The two reporters exited their vans, already covered up. Before they said anything, before the Arthur approached, they slowly walked to the back of the van and swung the doors open. This is where they kept the camera equipment, but I could also see that there were barrels of excess fuel. The reporters, a man and a woman, looked like statues come to life, wearing neatly folded brown and gray clothing. Their boots got dustier as the weekend went on. They brought their cameras into the dump and into stores and into some homes and shoved their microphones in our faces as if they were detecting us for metal. They never once took their gloves off either. The bottoms of their pants were tucked into the tops of their boots. I was wearing a new outfit and everything, with a little ribbon Mom had made me from the silk scraps, but they didn't even talk to me. They wanted to talk to my parents, as they were of some important standing. Dad was on the Arthur board, but my parents refused. Whatever it is they want, it's not good, Mom said the night before they left, over a dinner of microwaved green beans and gravy. People from elsewhere never stay long. They'll never make it back anyway, Dad said. Serves them right for coming here, Mom said, not looking up from her plate. I asked why. Why wouldn't they make it back and why it served them right? It's not right peering in on us like that, like we're animals in a cage, like their lives are so much better than ours, Mom said. They didn't have enough fuel, only 3 barrels, not enough to get back to where they came from, Dad said. I hope they ignite those barrels and their van blows up and incinerates them and their fancy shoes. He got up, scraped his plate into the garbage, and shoved the plate into the sink so hard that I was surprised it didn't crack. If the news story was ever made, we never saw it. The reporters left on the same road wearing the same clothes. We couldn't tell if they were happy they'd come or weary, full of usable, compelling material or disappointed. Mostly they looked hungry and sick. We all generally had an acute awareness of the town's failings, of its faults, of where it paled, where we paled in comparison to the Union. We knew what it was and we knew what it wasn't. We knew what we were and what we weren't, but it was still ours. It was still us. And whoever tried to embarrass us or exploit us had no place there. Just how far was the Union border? If my father said that 3 barrels of fuel couldn't get the reporters there, then how much would? Thank you.
We got our ice cream all-star that I'm sure everyone in this room has met in one way or another, but Allyson Whipple.
Missed last month because I was flying home from Mexico City. So in spite of all horrible events that have transpired, I'm actually really grateful to see Amanda and our other figures tonight. And I wrote this poem. I started it like 2 hours after getting into Mexico City and just wrote it continuously. And it started with the impetus of The thing I flew all the way to Mexico City to see, I got there and found out it was under construction. Because this is what happens when you don't really plan. So, love letter from Mexico City. I came here because a poem offered me eternity, the center of the universe. But the Zocalo is undergoing renovation. Beneath cathedral lights, a cement truck blares. Workers set fresh pavement. Before leaving, I planned the postcard I would write. Someday, I want to kiss you in the center of the universe. But with all the jersey wall and plastic, this looks more like the center of home than a place to consummate romance. I thought our love might have better luck in Garibaldi when I saw an old couple drinking pitchers of pulque all afternoon. You're 2,050 miles away as I climb the pyramid of the sun, as my lips blister in the thin atmosphere. You're so out of range, I can't even call to tell you how the chapulines tasted like beef jerky, how a homeless man blew a raspberry at me when I wouldn't give him any money. The tour guide tells me next year the city will be an inch lower, even more in some parts of town. You can see how the earth buckles, especially in the lean of all the cathedrals. Not even faith supports them. In the original Basilica de Guadalupe, the building tilts left, the altar skews right. The guide says the floor is one thing, construction is another. The city is layer upon layer of empire, each new conquest beating down the earth, each group of settlers pulling out all the water. The mountains are reclaiming all the stones driven from quarries, all the gold melted to form holy altars. Even the revolution's statues and street signs will be swallowed. I used to believe my heart would be safer if I loved places more than people. One city won't leave you for another. But earth will drag civilization back underground. Earthquakes split us apart at the seams. Hurricanes wash away our fingerprints and photographs. I fell in love with this city 7 years ago by way of a poem, and the first day I finally get to meet the center of the universe, the tour guide tells me it is slipping out of my grasp. Even cities leave you, or worse, they die. All my philosophy books have told me over and over, but I never listen, only get my heart broken again. Here I am confronted with dust and ruin, still believing in eternity. The tour guide calls Mexico City the bottom of the moon. Neon offices, streetlights so bright I cannot see a single star, and the moon too new tonight to show herself. Even with airline delays and the man wearing orange who followed me too close last night, I feel closer to heaven than hell. My luck hasn't bottomed out yet. You'd be proud of how well I've done facing down the stagnant labyrinth of traffic and the mess I make of the language. I remember my first taste of Mexico crossing the border in your old Ford, street tacos in Nuevo Laredo, waking early and reaching the mountains just as the sun began to rise. I remember the fog that morning, how it parted just in time to give me my first sight of the Sierra Madres, how I cried as the cloudy curtain pulled back and you drove us up toward the sky. I still want to bring you to the center of the universe, give you a little magic the way you gave me that first trip. I want you to know I love you the way I love the Sierra Madres on a foggy morning. And if the city swallows us whole, well, at least I'll know where I'm spending eternity.
Up next, we have another fabulous ice cream regular, Sam Treviño.
Evening, y'all. Okay. So, let's see. Do you have time for 2 short ones? Okay. Let me make sure. All right. So, over like the past few weeks, or honestly, the past 8 months, I've been thinking a lot about, apocalyptic stuff. I don't know why. And purely by accident, that kind of came out in these two, like, pretty new poems. So yeah, take with that as you will. The rain and what it brought and gave me. 1, a cool wind, followed by the ozone spell of scent from the hot sidewalks. And in the sprawling urban south, there are so many sidewalks, strip malls, bingo parlors, next to nail salons, next to cinder block buildings, once upon a time Tejano rockabilly clubs. The sidewalks remember. 2, the realization that if I existed simply as a sound, I would be the silence before a tornado, the anti-aural absence of birds as the sky turns a sickly green. 3, streets littered with fallen branches, like a basement show the morning after, might be littered with empty beer cans. As if the wind of hand-me-down amplifiers blew them there to block the red-eyed traffic after the storm of three-chord-driven younger days that either made us or left us broken as a live oak struck by lightning. 4, the knowledge that the birds will hopefully come back eventually once the world is finished ending. Now for the second one, which is not as upbeat. Nero makes an omelet. Human beings are like eggs. History has taught us this, how we are exquisite shells around golden pre-scramble. Our yolks want to escape though, and this can get messy. It takes practice and deep reflection to crack from the inside out, but after a while, it can come easily. All you gotta do is burn incense around your brokenness. Build an altar to your biggest mistakes. I'm talking about a cathedral of heartbreak, a tabernacle of bad intent. Self-destruction can be an art too, and hunger can be a terrible place to start from. So stand a while and appreciate the world collapsing in on itself. This is falling with intent. This is Nero scratching his fiddle while Rome burns. Maybe it wasn't celebration, but admiration. This is the light that wants to break us open. Thank you so much.